There are stories we never tell out loud, the ones that stay folded inside us like letters we never send. This is If I Could Say One More Thing, a podcast where unfinished conversations find a voice. Here, we explore the moments that linger, the what-ifs, the almosts, and the quiet truths that shape who we become. Some encounters feel ordinary until they aren't. In today's story, Zach runs into someone he hasn't seen in years, his first love, Hannah, on a busy corner in New York. It's a chance meeting that lasts only a few minutes, but the conversation he doesn't have with her will echo far longer. This is The Walk I Never Took, a story about memory, restraint, and the small mercies that come with letting the past stay exactly where it belongs. If I'm honest, I didn't recognize her at first. New York does that. It slaps new labels onto old things and calls it reinvention. Corner bodegas become wellness apothecaries. A laundromat wakes up as a concept gallery, and the girl you kiss behind the bleachers grows into a woman carrying a museum tote and a tired kind of grace that says she has learned the nightly math of packing lunches while paying the electric bill. I was standing on a SoHo corner debating whether $6.50 was too much for coffee in a city where people scoop the middle out of a bagel, eat the scraps, and call it health food. She was there, then, tugged into my life by the crosswalk light, moving toward me with that same measured gait from high school, determined, like the hallway belonged to her and possibly the moon. The city threw its unusual party, taxis honking like geese with tenure, sirens declaring emergencies that were none of my business, a wind that smelled like pretzel salt and opportunity. She looked up. I looked up. The world paused. Or anyway, I paused, which is the same as the world if you're me. Zach? She said, my name like an old coat that still fit. And there she was, Hannah. High school sweetheart makes it sound like we were polite about it. We were not. We were a pair of newly licensed emotions, drunk on permission, convinced we'd invented the world and installed ourselves as the troubleshooting department. We were the kind of earnest that could start a forest fire with eye contact. She had a laugh like a skipped stone, twice, 3 times, then gone. And I was a boy who believed metaphors counted as income. God, I said, which is what I say when I mean, please let this be true, and also don't let me embarrass myself. Hannah. We tried to hug casually and ended up doing that strange pat-down people in airports get. Half awkward, half ritual. Her hair was shorter. Mine was heroic in its attempts to leave the team. We were both wearing rings. Her band thin and elegant. Mine scratched, in the way of a man who once mistook a power drill for a personality. "What are the odds?" she asked, not like a cliché, but like someone who has lived long enough to respect the mathematics of surprise. "I have 2 kids who don't understand socks," I said. "Odds often lose to logistics." She was in town for a conference and, this made me laugh, for a visit to the Whitney. "I've said next time for 10 years, she explained, and I'm tired of breaking promises to myself. The Whitney, of course. A building that looks like it knows its own worth, perched at the edge of the meatpacking district. I pictured her wandering through rooms of Hopper's lonely gas stations and Calder's bent wire creatures, trying to translate her own years into brushstrokes and shadows. We stood there, stacked with small talk like bowls in a dish rack, careful not to tip the one that would flood us both with past tense. The past is heavy when it's full of names. "How are you?" she asked, which is code for "Who are you now?" "Married. Mostly happily," I said. "You?" She smiled in a way that looked like a yes with a few footnotes. "Yeah, same." This would be the part where a bold person says, "Want to walk?" I am not a bold person. I am a man who packs carrot sticks into tiny boxes because big boxes make them look like failures. We walk anyway, just half a block, because the light turned and so did our feet, because the city was indulgent for once, delivering us a corridor of time. I told her about my kids, how one collects rocks and the other collects injustices. She told me about her daughter who plays the violin like it's a truth she found under a bed. We laugh about how high school made it seem that missing a party meant you turn into a chimney sweep and live under an overpass. We did not mention prom, or the way we had been terrible drivers of each other's hearts. 2 16-year-olds without maps, barreling through weather we didn't know how to name. At the next corner she stopped. "I should get to the museum," she said, looking over my shoulder like there was a life there, and there was. "And I should get back," I said, though what I meant was that if we didn't stop here, I might say something that belonged to another time, and time is territorial. We hugged again, the upgraded version, the executive hug. I felt, as I sometimes do, like I was carrying a storm I couldn't take with me. It was still mine, even if I couldn't bring it along. "Zach," she said, and there was a kindness in it that worked on my knees. "It was good to see you." "You too," I said, which is one of those phrases we use to keep from falling down. Then she walked away toward a museum where the paintings keep their distance and the small plaques try to explain them. I walked toward a meeting where the PowerPoint slides believed they were telling a story, and we didn't take the walk we should have taken. Or maybe it's fairer to say we didn't take the walk I keep taking now, in my head, the one that is good and dangerous in equal measure. In my version, I call after her. "Hannah," I say, and for once the city holds its breath. You've come this far. Walk a little more with me. It's an easy ask in the imaginary. No bosses tapping their watches. No kids handing me school forms written in that special language of polite threats and guilt trips. In this walk that never happened, she turns and smiles and tucks her hair behind her ear, a gesture I knew back when gestures were the whole language. We fall into step like we used to fall into everything, too quickly, too confidently, with the kind of hope a person should be required to wear a helmet for. We head west, because the body remembers the direction of sunsets. We pass a store that sells candles for the price of groceries and a dog that looks like it runs a hedge fund. We don't talk at first. There is a silence you earn by surviving one another's exits. That silence is what religion would be if it stopped trying so hard. And then the words come, carried like cups we are careful not to spill. Do you remember that summer we wouldn't swim because we'd heard about the snapping turtles? She asks, laughing. We stayed on the dock and imagined it was the whole ocean, I say. We were prodigies at pretending. You made me a mixtape so intense it nearly violated state law, she says. You called it Songs for When You Can't Tell the Sky What to Do. I was very sure the sky needed my advice, I say. It didn't listen. She tells me about her husband in the ways that matter. Not his job title, but the fact that he laughs with his whole face, that he makes pancakes on Saturdays that look like states. I tell her about my wife, how she still reaches for my hand in the middle of sleep like she's checking the fire drill. I tell her about the night our younger child was sick and my wife held a bowl and sang show tunes like incantations. We inventory our lives not to impress each other, but to lay them out like picnic blankets. To say, look, we made homes. We did not, in fact, ruin everything. We could confuse this for an affair if we didn't know better. But the truth is more ordinary and therefore more sacred. It's a condiment of affection spread very thin on the bread of life we intend to keep. At a crosswalk, she says, I thought I'd be a different person by now. I am a different person, I say. I'm just using the same name. It confuses the dog. What would you tell the people we were? She asks. Buy stock in anything that ends in gram, I say. Then quiet her. Slow down when you're happy. Take pictures in your head of the spaghetti boiling over and the sound of your mom's laughter as she's stirring it back down. She looks towards the river. I'd tell her to keep the poems, even if no one reads them. We read them, I say. We just call them something else. We keep walking, crossing streets I don't cross when I'm in a hurry. The city appears to be practicing for an exam it will never take. Everyone brisk, determined, carrying tote bags like degrees. We are not part of that rush for once. We move like people who already know where they live. Why did we break up? She asks finally, as if it were a radiator we could fix with a wrench. In my memory, we didn't, I say. We just kept walking in different directions. I could tell her about the letter I wrote and never sent, how it sat in my desk like an extra organ. I could tell her that when we were 19, I stood on a sidewalk holding the chipped mug she had given me, not knowing whether to throw it out or keep it forever, and decided to use it for pens so it wouldn't get even more chipped. That mug still sits by our back door. It holds key rings and loose screws and the wishes you find in pockets. But all I say is, we were young. We didn't know that love is a house with a laundry room. She laughs. There's the stone skipping. Once, twice. And says, we didn't know love came with grocery lists and a parking app. We reach the river. It is in a permanent conversation with the wind. Boats move like slow ideas. Dusk begins, and with it, that generous hour when everything looks better than it is. We sit on a bench that insists on using slats no matter how many cushions exist in the world. From here, the skyline looks like a handshake between old money and new hope. Can I tell you something? I ask, and because this is the walk we didn't take, I am brave. Of course, she says, and I believe her. You were the first, I say. And I don't mean in the way boys brag and then take off their shirts. I mean, you were the first person who made me think I could live a life where I felt more than I explained. You taught me that joy was not a performance, that pain wasn't failure. You were the first door I opened that felt like a house. She doesn't look at me right away. She looks at the water, which is a considerate thing to do. You were my first too, she says finally. Not just a first love. My first proof. Proof of what? That I could be known and not evaporate, she says. That I could be seen and still keep my shape. We sit with that. Boats have the decency to honk elsewhere. I'm not saying this to rewrite anything, I tell her. I have a life I would defend with my bare teeth, and I know you do too. I'm just saying, if there's a cupboard in my heart labeled firsts, your name is on the good china. That doesn't mean it comes out every day. It just means it never goes in the yard sale. That's kind, she says, which I recognize as code for this might make me cry at an unhelpful angle. We're different people now, I add. We've been sanded down by errands and mercy. And the high school version of us, they were true, but they aren't in charge anymore. I'm glad they aren't, she says. We talk about the ways we failed and lived anyway. She admits she once broke a promise to herself, and it taught her that promises made at midnight are not legally binding. I confess that I am bad at being a son when I'm busy being a father. We exchange guilt the way people trade seeds at a spring fair. Neither of us plants anything reckless. We are careful We are careful like we were not back then. And it feels like wisdom, which is to say loss that paid rent. Night, when it comes like a decision someone else made. Streetlights click on, polite, efficient, fluorescent stars. In the distance, the city performs its lit windows. Somewhere behind us, a couple argues in a language I wish I spoke. In another life, we might have stood and kissed then. Ceremony and final. The camera of our youth dragging a crane shot out of its pocket. In this life, we stand and straighten our jackets like people with spines and calendars. I should go, she says, before I turn into a pumpkin or a cliché. I should too, I say. My department scheduled a late afternoon meeting, which is a crime in some countries. We walk back the way we came. Near the corner where our real hug happened, we stop, as if paying respect to a landmark only we can see. She reaches out, not for a grand gesture, but to touch my sleeve, lightly, like she's testing fabric. Zach, she says, and her voice is a small room with good light. I'm glad we were who we were. Me too, I say. I'm glad we aren't anymore. We don't promise to write. We don't violate the treaty we've made with our lives. We step back, and the distance instantly yokes itself to us like a well-trained dog. She turns towards the museum. I turn toward my office. We go. That's the walk I didn't take, which is to say, I took it alone later, after I had answered emails and found the missing lid for the leftovers and reminded a small person that homework is not a citizen's arrest. I took it while standing at the sink, the water running, my wife in the next room humming a song that has outlived 5 separate kitchen sponges. I took it while I brushed my teeth and when I folded shirts, which is my meditation and my single reliable contribution to the household economy besides opening jars. I took it over and over, not to torture myself, but to give the moment an ending I could live with. An ending that doesn't ask for pining or permission slips from a past that will not sign them. Because the truth is, I didn't say those words on the sidewalk. I didn't say you were my first and will always have a place in my heart because people like us, with mortgages and carpools and dogs who acknowledge only one of us as an authority, we know that saying a thing out loud changes it. And I don't want to change it. I want to set it on a shelf where nothing melts. I want to honor it the way you honor a photograph you don't post, by letting it be true without testing its likes. Perhaps if I'd been single and she had been free, our story would have stretched a little farther, learned a few new tricks, maybe even grown into the kind of ordinary life that comes with a laundry room. Maybe we would have discovered we were very good at being middle-aged together, that we both liked the same brand of tired. Or maybe we would have taken one more look at each other in the honest light and said, kindly, we were perfect once because we were unfinished. It's hard to know. And I've learned not to interrogate the ghosts in the hallway. They're busy. They have their own appointments to keep. What I know is this. Some loves are rivers you live beside. You don't have to jump in to be changed by the sound. You can carry the shape of that water with you into kitchens and offices and little league bleachers. You can let it make you softer when your kid hands you a rock and calls it a planet. You can let it make you steadier when your wife reaches for your hand at 3 a.m., neither of you awake enough to know who started the reaching. I have, for years, kept a box of relics from the boy I was. A ticket stub, a pinback button, the photo strip where we look like we're trying to murder each other with our kisses. There's a napkin with her lipstick, like a comet that forgot its mission. There is the mixtape, of course, though the machine that could understand it has long since joined the choir invisible. I open that box less now, but sometimes, on a morning when the coffee goes wrong for no reason and the dog decides democracy is over, I'll let myself peek. Not to go back, just to acknowledge that the person I am knows the person I was, and they still nod at each other across the room. If you're listening, which you won't be, because why would you be? I want to say this, Hannah. You were my first. Not first as in the only. Not first as in best. First as in foundation. The house I live in now, its windows, its leaky gutters, its night noises, is partly built with days you handed me when we were too young to know the price of lumber. You have a place in my heart, the way a first language lives under a second. Quiet, structural, occasionally rising to the surface when I'm tired or honest. I don't need anything from you, not even a reply. This is not a key under the mat. It's a light left on over a porch we don't use anymore. We didn't take the long walk that day. We obeyed our schedules, our better angels, our small print promises. We left each other at a corner and returned to the lives we chose and keep choosing day by day in the boring, heroic ways that add up to a marriage. I am grateful for that. I am grateful for you. I am grateful for the fact that some stories continue only in the subjunctive. If we had, we would have. Because they remind me that much of love is consenting to the lives we already have and shining them. We say in my house when a kid wants more TV or I want more cake, enough is a feast. It turns out that's true of memory too. The half block we walked is enough. The thought of the longer walk, the one I replay sometimes while the dishwasher dreams, is a feast I can eat without hunger. I don't need more to bless what was. I saw a photo once of a river taking each season from the same bridge. Spring lit up like a rumor, summer green as a yes, autumn a gold that meant pay attention, winter honest enough to hurt. I liked the winter best. It told the whole truth. No camouflage, no decorations, just water and the banks that hold it. This is my winter picture then. Not colder, clearer. You on a sidewalk I didn't expect. Me with a coffee I could afford and didn't need. Both of us older in the way that makes rooms quieter. We smiled. We compared notes on the human project. We turned away while the light was still good. We kept walking. And that was The Walk I Never Took, written for someone who once wondered what might have happened if a chance meeting had lasted just a little longer. The story you just heard belongs to Zach, though as always, names and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Now, we'll move from the page to the person to hear what it was like for him to revisit that moment and to imagine the words he never spoke. Thank you for trusting me with your story. You just listened to me read The Walk We Never Took. What was it like hearing that chapter of your life, told back to you in this way?
In truth, it felt a little like watching someone else's movie about my life. I mean, I knew the story, obviously, but hearing it out loud, it was like, suddenly catching these small things I'd forgotten. The way the city smelled that day, or how awkward that first hug really was. I don't usually go back to moments like that in detail, but hearing it, it just kind of knocked me sideways.
When I was shaping the scene on the corner in SoHo, coffee in hand, with all the city noise surrounding you, you suddenly see Hannah again. What stood out the most for you in that moment?
That it was her. And also, oh God, don't say anything stupid. It was like the years folded in on themselves. She was the same girl and this totally new woman at the same time. I mean, I just froze. I wasn't ready for how much it would matter.
In the story, I describe the rings, on both your hands as a kind of quiet reminder of the lives you've built since then. Did that detail land with you?
Yeah, it did. I mean, the rings were like this unspoken truth hanging between us. A signal that whatever we once were, we'd each built whole other worlds since then. And yet, seeing her, it was also like bumping into a younger version of myself I didn't know I'd been missing. Like when a smell suddenly yanks you back to childhood, and it just floors you. Both things were true at once.
There's a line I used. Time is territorial. To capture, how you both stayed careful, not crossing into what belonged to the past. Do you feel like that rang true?
Oh, definitely. Part of me wanted to just say, forget the museum, let's walk, let's talk. But another part knew, if I cracked that door even a little, I might not be able to close it. And I mean, I've got this whole life now. Kids, work, routines. It felt dangerous in a way, like stirring up weather you can't control.
In the real moment, you only walk half a block together. That's what happened in reality. But in the story, I gave you that longer, imagined walk. How did it feel hearing me put shape to that?
It actually felt really close to how I've carried it in my head all these years. I mean, we only had a few minutes, but in my imagination, I've replayed that moment over and over, adding the walk we didn't take. So hearing you give that version words, it was like you cracked open the little daydream I'd been keeping quiet. It made me feel less silly for still holding on to it.
When I wrote that extended walk, I wanted to show how imagination can live alongside real life. Did it feel like I captured something about the way you carry Hannah with you now?
I do. I mean, Hannah was the first proof that you can be really known by someone and not disappear. That sticks with you. It's made me more willing to let my family see the messy, unpolished sides of me. Like, you don't have to explain everything all the time. You just get to feel it together.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I was writing her into the story, I kept wondering what she represented for you back then. Did the way I paint her line up with how you remembered it?
Yeah, it did. I mean, she really was my first foundation. Not the whole house, just the idea that a house could exist. You wrote her as this combination of fire and tenderness, and that's exactly how I remember it. Before her, I didn't even know love could feel that big. She showed me it could, and I think your version really caught that.
In the story, I contrasted that foundation with the house you've built now. Did that feel like the right metaphor for holding the past alongside the present?
It did. I mean, the metaphor worked because it keeps them separate but connected. The past isn't my daily life anymore, but it's still a part of the structure underneath. Like a hidden support beam. You don't see it all the time, but it's there. Hearing it framed that way made me think, yeah, that's exactly how it feels.
You may have noticed I ended the story with that winter picture, clearer, not colder. Did that image feel true to how you see it?
Yeah, exactly. It's not about longing anymore. It's about clarity. That moment boiled down to something I can actually hold without burning my hands. It's clean. And I kind of like it that way.
I also wrote the line, "Enough is a feast." That the half block you actually shared was already enough. Did that phrase resonate with you?
It really did. We're so used to thinking closure means more.
Mm-hmm.
Another talk, another goodbye, another explanation, maybe even another round of what ifs. But sometimes the little you get is enough. That half block walk, it gave me just enough to bless what we had without needing to rewrite it. And that stayed with me.
For my final question, if Hannah were listening right now to this telling of your story, what would you want her to hear?
I'd say thank you. Thank you for being my first proof that I could be seen and still exist. You helped build the man I became, even if you don't realize it. And I'm glad we were who we were, and I'm glad we aren't anymore. Both truths can live together.
Well, Zach, thank you for letting me tell your story and then walking back through it with me like this. I think so many people will recognize themselves in the walk they never took. And maybe they'll find comfort in knowing they're not alone.
Thank you, Andrea. Really. It's been a gift to walk it again, just like this.
Some stories don't ask to be rewritten. They simply ask to be remembered, softly, without trying to change what was. Zach's story reminds us that not every reunion is meant to reopen a door. Sometimes the gift is in knowing that what you shared still exists somewhere, not as a regret, but as a quiet thread woven into who you've become. We all have moments like that, a face we still think of when a certain song plays, or a memory that lives just beneath the surface. And maybe that's enough. Because not every connection is meant to last a lifetime. Some are meant to show us what love once looked like before time taught us how to keep it. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a what if, a person you still wonder about, I'd love to hear it. You can send your story requests to SayOneMoreThingPod at gmail.com. And if this episode spoke to you, please follow the podcast and share it with someone who understands that sometimes closure isn't an ending. It's simply peace. I'm Andrea Applewick, and this is If I Could Say One More Thing.